I remember that Tuesday started like any other. My alarm off at 7, I hit snooze once, then dragged myself to the shower. The water pressure in my apartment building was terrible as usual, so the process was more of a frustrating drizzle than an actual cleansing experience. I made coffee, burnt my tongue on the first sip, and scrolled through my phone without really seeing anything. Work was work. I'm a graphic designer, which sounds a lot more glamorous than it is. Most days, I'm just moving text boxes around in corporate presentations and making pie charts look slightly less boring. I ate a sad desk salad for lunch while watching a documentary about beavers. By 5 o'clock, the sky had turned that flat, gray color that feels like a wet blanket over the whole city. My only plan for the evening was to pick up my dry cleaning and maybe grab Thai food from the place on the corner. Riveting stuff. The dry cleaners was my first stop. Mr. Kim, who runs the place, greeted me with his usual warm smile and a comment about the rain holding off. I handed him my ticket, and he disappeared into the forest of plastic-wrapped clothes. As I waited, I just stood there, staring blankly at the cracks in the sidewalk, thinking about whether I had any clean socks left at home. It was that level of thrilling. Ticket in hand, I started walking towards my apartment. The air had that clean, just rain smell. About halfway down the block when I passed a small, independent bookshop. It's one of those places I'd always meant to go into but never did. The window display was full of staff pics, little handwritten notes taped to the front of each book. I glanced at them as I walked by, my pace slowing just a fraction. And then, the door of the shop swung open. I wasn't looking where I was going. My eyes were still on the display, and I was a little too close to the doorway. The door hit me. Not hard, just a solid, surprising thump on my shoulder. The person on the other end of the door gasped, "Oh my God, I am so sorry." I turned, a clumsy apology already forming on my lips. And that's when I saw her. She was holding a heavy canvas tote bag in one hand and the door in the other. Her hair, a light brown, was a little messy, like she'd been running her hands through while reading. A few stray strands had escaped a lopsided ponytail. She was wearing a simple, oversized gray sweater and jeans with a small rip in one knee. She wasn't, in any conventional sense, a bombshell. Real. Utterly and completely real. And then, met mine. For a second, maybe two, the whole world just stopped. It's the most ridiculous cliché in the book, but it's the truth. The sound of the traffic on the main road faded into a dull hum. The sight of Mr. Kim's dry bag flapping in my peripheral vision vanished. All I could see were her eyes. They were green. Not a bright, emerald green, but a soft, quiet green like sea glass or the color of moss in the shade. And, in that tiny suspended moment, they were looking right back at me. My mind went completely blank. Every thought, every mundane worry about socks and Thai food and beaver documentaries, just evaporated. It was like my internal monologue had been unplugged. And then in its place came a sudden, panicked rush of noise. Say something. You're just staring. You're a weirdo who got hit by a door and is now just staring at this woman. Apologize. You look like, why aren't you talking? She has really nice eyes. Say something about her eyes. Don't say that. Just say sorry. I finally managed to speak, and my voice came out about an octave higher than normal. No, I'm sorry. I was in the way. I wasn't looking. I gestured vaguely at my own head, as if to indicate its completeness. A tiny smile touched her lips. It wasn't a big, perfect, movie star smile. It was a small, hesitant thing, a slight curve of her mouth. It was so much better that. You weren't in the way, she said. I just swung the door open with the grace of a baby giraffe, and then we both just stood there. The awkwardness was palpable, thick enough to spread on toast. She was half out of the doorway, I was half in front of it. Neither of us moved. We were just two people connected by a shared, clumsy moment, frozen on a city sidewalk. I became hyper-aware of small details. The way she was clutching the handle of her tote bag, her knuckles just slightly white. There was a small, faded ink stain on the side of her thumb. A bookworm's badge of honor. I could smell a hint of something. Not perfume, but maybe laundry detergent. Something clean like lavender. The leather on the edge of her bag was worn and soft. I had to say something else. Anything to break the spell. My eyes landed on the bag. Did you find a good book? I asked, nodding towards it. It was the most mundane question in human history, but it was all I had. Her smile widened just a little. I think so. It's a collection of short stories by a Uruguayan author I've never heard of. The owner wrote a note on the card that said it changed his life. Seemed like a good enough to buy it, right? She had a nice voice. It was calm and clear, with a slight rasp to it, like she'd just woken up from a nap or spent the afternoon talking. Yeah, I agreed, probably too enthusiastically. You have to trust a bookseller's life-changing recommendation. That's like rule number 1. She laughed then. A real, genuine laugh, short and a little surprised, as if she hadn't expected to find anything funny about this encounter. The sound of it hit me right in the chest. An awkward silence fell again, but this one felt different. Less panicked. More like we were both waiting. I didn't want to walk away. The thought of just saying, well, have a good night, and continuing on my way to my lonely dry cleaning, and my uneaten Thai food felt physically impossible, like trying to walk into a brick wall. So I took a shot in the dark. I said, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trap bird. This is going to sound incredibly forward, and you can absolutely say no. Are you heading somewhere? Or do you have a minute? She tilted her head, studying me for a moment. It wasn't a suspicious look, just a curious one, as if she was trying to figure me out. I was just heading home, she said. Why? There's a pretty good coffee cart about a block from here, I said, pointing vaguely down the street. They make this amazing horchata latte. Maybe you'd like to get one. As an apology for getting in the way of your door. The words tumbled out in a jumbled, nervous rush. It was the best I could do. She looked at me for another long second, and in that second, my brain flooded with doubt. This is stupid. She's going to think you're a weirdo. She's going to make an excuse and leave. Should have just said goodbye. Okay, she said simply. My brain short-circuited again. Okay? Yeah, she said, her small smile returning. An apology latte sounds fair. Lead the way. And just like that, we were walking, side by side. I was acutely aware of the space between us, the rhythm of our steps, trying to find a match. I told her my name. She told me hers was Claire. The conversation at first was stilted, full of the standard getting-to-know-you questions. What do you do? Graphic designer, moving text boxes. What about you? She was as a veterinary technician, which immediately made her 1,000 times more interesting than me. Do you come to this part of town often? Apparently, she came to that bookshop all the time, but somewhere between ordering the lattes and finding a rickety, damp table outside, the conversation shifted. The question stopped feeling like an interview and started feeling like a natural exchange. She told me about a 3-legged cat she'd helped nurse back to health. I told her about the time I accidentally designed a logo for a company that turned out to be a front for something slightly illegal. She laughed at that same surprised laugh. She had a habit of tucking a piece of hair behind her when she was listening intently. I noticed she held her coffee cup with both hands, even though it wasn't cold out. We talked for an hour. The sun began to set, painting the wet street in shades of orange and pink. The coffee cups were long empty. We'd run out of small talk and moved on to bigger things. The places we wanted to travel, the books that had made us cry, the strange comfort of a rainy Sunday afternoon. When we finally stood up to leave, the air felt different, charged. The city had woken up around us, the evening crowd filling the sidewalks, but it felt like we were in our own little bubble. We walked back towards the bookshop, where it had all started. We stopped on the corner. This was the moment. The moment where you either say goodnight and walk away, or you don't. I took a breath. Claire, I said, and she looked up at me, her sea-glass eyes catching the last of the light. I know this is just an apology latte, and I know this whole day was just a random Tuesday, but I don't want this to be the end of it. I felt like an idiot. It was a simple, unpoetic thing to say. But it was the truth. She was quiet for a moment, and I felt my stomach drop. Then she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small, worn notebook and a pen. She scribbled something on a page, tore it out, and handed it to me. It was her name and a phone number. Neither do I, she said softly. Call me. Maybe we can find a book that will change your life next time. I took the slip of paper, holding it carefully, as if it were made of glass. I looked from her number back to her face. She was smiling, that real, hesitant, wonderful smile, and in her eyes, I saw a reflection of the same feeling that was roaring through me. A quiet, stunned and hopeful certainty something important had just begun. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was just a Tuesday night, a damp street corner, and a phone number on a scrap of paper. But as I watched her walk away, tucking her hair behind her ear one last time, with every fiber of my being, that my ordinary life was over, and I couldn't wait to see what came next.